Next, I want to talk about genetic testing. So we all know that we're individuals and that there, for example, isn't one diet that works for everyone. There isn't one lifestyle approach that works for everyone. We should not all be exercising the same way based on our genetics. So there are a lot of people that say, I don't want to know my genetics because if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. However, this is where epigenetics comes in. Epigenetics is the interplay between how does all of my choices on a daily basis, how do those choices impact my genetics? Our DNA is what we are born with. So if we check your genetics today, then they'll be the same tomorrow and the rest of your life. It's the same genetics that you had the very moment you were born. We came into this world with a certain set of DNA. So we can test a lot of things. But in the world of heart attack prevention, we want to start with some key genetics. And the reason we want to start with these is because they are, what I say, actionable. We can change your environment, we can change your daily choices, and we can alter your epigenetics to make those genes work in your favor. In other words, you've probably heard about your DNA is not your destiny and turn your genes off. Well, okay, that's not exactly accurate. Your DNA isn't your destiny. So if you have some genes that put you at a higher risk for heart attack, let's say, or put you at higher risk for a certain disease that you don't want, of course, there is a way to keep those genes turned down. You won't, of course, turn that gene off. It's in your body forever, but you can turn it down so that it doesn't ever manifest in your life, especially if you turn the good genes that are working in your favor up. And that is epigenetics, making choices based on the genetics that you have, not that your neighbor has, not that your loved one has, but your genetics. Once you know that, it's very powerful because you can make a choice at dinner, or you can make a choice of how you choose to sleep. Everything that we do in life, how we handle stress, how much sleep you need, for example, is really, we can understand a lot more and make better recommendations precisely for you. So the top tests for heart attack, the top genetic tests are 9p21, the heart attack gene. And then we also like to look at ApoE. ApoE can increase your risk of cardiovascular disease and dementia for sure. You've probably heard about the ApoE4. The 4 increase, you can be any combination of 2, 3, and 4. So 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, etc. You have 2, so you're either 3, 3 is the most common. But if you have a 2, 4 or a 3, 4 or a 4, 4, then you do have an increased risk of dementia. So you definitely want to know that because we will give you strict recommendations. I say strict, it's really not an unpleasant diet, but you want to make some choices based on that ApoE4, particularly around the amount of saturated fat, not just all fat, but around saturated fat. And there's other things you can do. But you can see that's just an example of the power of knowing your genetics. If you have that type of 4 in your ApoE gene, then you want to make some changes to make sure you live out your life without the impact of dementia and cardiovascular disease. Another one, the heart attack gene we talked about briefly, and then haptoglobin is one that I think is incredibly important because if we have a variance in the heptaglobin gene, then we're not very good at detoxifying. So we like to bind up any toxins that come into the body and we attach them to hemoglobin, red blood cells, to carry them out of the body. But if you have a heptaglobin variance, you're very inefficient at doing this. So we know it's even more important that you protect yourself from toxins in the environment, from pollution to radiation to pesticides in your food, etc. And most importantly, these individuals are the ones that are impacted by gluten in their diet, because gluten in the heptaglobin individual with a variance in heptaglobin does make the intestinal lining leakier by increasing a substance called zonulin. Maybe you've heard about zonulin on some of our GI talks. But gluten is to be avoided in someone with a heptaglobin variance. And then one other gene I'll talk about is the MTHFR gene, which also helps us understand if you're a good detoxifier or you're good, what's called methylator, meaning you take your nutrients down the appropriate pathway, or does your body struggle to convert them into actual usable, helpful nutrients, as well as getting rid of the toxins. So MTHFR gene is incredibly important as well. And that's just a little snippet, a short list of some of the most important genes for heart attack and stroke and dementia prevention. But there are so many, and many of them are very important. And you can get an inflammatory panel that starts with those few, and that's usually where we start with our clients. Or we do another saliva test that tests for your exercise in more depth. And are you at risk for heart arrhythmias more in depth? Are you at risk for chronic health conditions because of the way you're sleeping? More nuances around your diet. So the list goes on in terms of the genetics you can get tested and recommendations we can make around them. The other thing I'll say is you've heard me talk about the True Diagnostics True Age test. This test helps us understand as a more global look of whatever this individual's genetics are, how well is their lifestyle protecting them? In other words, this test gives you your age on the inside, your true age. So I'm 61, and my true age, meaning when I do this test and send it off to the lab, it comes back and tells me, based on my DNA and based on the things that I'm doing on a daily basis, am I slowing the aging process, or am I accelerating my aging process? So we want to age slowly. That's why you hear a lot of talk about reversing the aging process, or being ageless. You actually can slow down aging and be 61 and have a biological age of 41 or 51. So this is a very exciting test as well. It isn't specifically testing genetics, but more importantly, it's one of the best tests at looking at the epigenetic impact, your daily choices on turning on those favorable genes, turning them up to help you, and then keeping those genes that could put you at risk for disease, keeping those quiet. I'm Dr. Gina Pritchard, owner of the Prevent Clinic. Please contact us to learn more.